This week on Jersey Matters, new CDC guidelines for going outside without a mask. We get reaction from Sharif ElNahal, CEO and president of University Hospital. One county in New Jersey may start paying people to get their vaccine. Now you have to worry about ticks when you go to the beach? We get an update on tick season from the scientist that leads CDC research on the topic. And if you can't travel to get your vaccine, the Covee Car will come to you. Hello, and welcome to Jersey Matters. I'm Larry Menti. We begin today's show with my interview with Dr. Sharif ElNahal, CEO and president of University Hospital in Newark. Doctor, as always, thanks for your time. It's interesting we get to talk to you today. Within the hour, new CDC guidelines came out on the day we're taping this on Tuesday that say that you don't have to wear your mask if you're fully vaccinated and you're outside, even in small gatherings. What do you think? Is that appropriate for right now?
I think it is, Larry. So in the backdrop, you have a situation where we have blockbuster vaccines. We have 3 vaccines that are exceptional in terms of their efficacy. You're lucky, for example, with the flu vaccine, if you get 65% effectiveness, these vaccines all exceed that. And they're also overwhelmingly safe. Despite the Johnson & Johnson pause, it turned out that the benefits outweighed the risks significantly. And so the CDC actually asked to continue it for everybody, even younger women. And so right now you have a situation where vaccines confer a lot of protection and folks want to have more latitude if they're vaccinated. And it really increases the value and the pitch that we're making to folks to get vaccinated in order to have more of these restrictions lifted. And so every time we allow folks to not wear masks or go to gatherings, I think it actually helps in the vaccination effort.
How do you know if someone's vaccinated or they're not vaccinated? Doesn't it give people that just don't want to wear a mask permission to not wear one?
It's an interesting point. I would say that we all have to live by the honor code to a certain extent. We don't have enforcement of any of these restrictions on a day-to-day basis outdoors, really. And so, I think what we're doing is telling folks that they can take more of a risk in the sense that they don't have to wear masks and can get closer to a sense of normalcy, but also, again, allowing folks who are vaccinators like ourselves at University Hospital, governments, et cetera, to make even more of a pitch to get more folks vaccinated. So I think it's consistent with the data and the evidence. And hopefully now that 50% of American adults have at least one dose, even greater than that, they announced that last week, you'll see more folks taking that latitude and encourage more folks to get it.
Yeah, 50%. We were steaming along. We were leading the world in vaccinations, and all of a sudden, it seems like it's slowed down. Do you have a concern that all the people that wanted to get vaccinated have gotten vaccinated? Now we're getting to a point where there's some resistance?
We're definitely hitting a more resistant wave of folks who are next in terms of us convincing them to get the vaccine. There are different levels of hesitancy. And in fact, there really is a different category entirely, as I've been thinking about it and describing it, called the relatively unmotivated segment of the population. So you have folks who, of course, are anti-vaccine, may believe the misinformation out there, who will never take it. And then you have a group of mostly younger people who do not view the risk of COVID to be significant, who are fine with vaccines and may believe the science, but say, you know what, why would I go through the effort of taking a day off of work, potentially having a couple of days of bad side effects, doing that twice potentially if you take one of those vaccines? I think I'm okay. And so we really have to get to those folks and remind them that the risk of inaction here is much greater to them than the risk of taking the action to take the vaccine. And as human beings, we always underweight the risk of inaction and overweight the risk of taking an action like a vaccine. And so it's really about repeating the message and calibrating it over time to get to that more difficult next group of people.
The variant is in the United States. It's in almost every state right now. And it seems like, you mentioned the group of younger people, it seems like it's affecting younger people. How big of a concern is that variant? And if you are vaccinated, are you protected from it?
Well, one thing I'll mention, Larry, is that at University Hospital, we've seen higher rates of admission for younger age groups. 40 to 49 and 50 to 59 were admitted at higher rates even than last spring when we had a terrible surge. And so, yes, the B117 variant, the UK variant, is the most dominant variant in the United States and very likely in New Jersey. And we have to be very careful because it spreads more easily and it's also worse. And so younger folks are vulnerable to this, not nearly as vulnerable as older people who are higher risk, but the risk isn't zero. And so we really have to reinforce that. And what's going on in India also gave rise to a variant, which is the worst surge per capita in the world in the history of this pandemic. We have direct flights coming to Newark Airport all the time from Mumbai and Delhi. And so we really have to be vigilant in this very last mile as we move forward.
Let's get back to the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because it's a New Jersey company and everybody was excited about it because it was one shot and it was more easily stored and distributed. And they've had a couple of setbacks, not just the 6 women who died, but a manufacturing setback and a gentleman from New Jersey who had to go into intensive care after getting the shot. All of that bad publicity, I'm certain, raised concerns. Is the concern about Johnson & Johnson, even though it's now been, the pause has been lifted by the CDC, are they legitimate concerns? Should we be concerned about it?
I would say that the concerns are being weighted higher than the risk of getting COVID in some cases, and that's just not correct. The risk of not getting a vaccine at all, whether in Johnson & Johnson or not, is much higher to you. We just talked about no matter what age you are, your risk of getting severe disease, hospitalization, and even death is much greater if you get the disease. And the fact is, these vaccines are very effective at preventing severe disease. In fact, near 100% effective at preventing hospitalization and death. That one anecdote of one person who had to be admitted after vaccination is one of millions of people who have gotten the J&J vaccine. Compare that to people still being admitted to the hospital every day in New Jersey with COVID-19 because they're not vaccinated yet. So again, it's important to really weigh the risks and benefits of inaction versus getting the vaccine.
You would have no problem getting the J&J vaccine.
I would not. I trust the CDC. I trust the analysis that they did, which clearly spelled out the risk that you're much less likely to get the disease and to die if you get Johnson & Johnson than not getting a vaccine at all. And that's what's most important. You have to understand that it was a cluster of very rare disease that was found that ultimately was not even proven to be definitively associated with the vaccine. So we really have to understand that. And there is an FDA label warning now on the Johnson & Johnson, but public health experts across the board agree that it is still a safe and effective vaccine.
Let's move on to your new hospital. You're going to build a brand new hospital. When will they break ground and how long is that going to take?
Well, that's the goal, Larry. And while those dates aren't set in stone, what we have is a pretty significant commitment from the state to allow us to explore this, generate excitement, generate the support from the community and the input, very importantly, from the community on what this new campus will look like and where the new building will be and how it will look. And we're starting that process now over the next year. And shortly after that, we hope to actually get a developer on board and really start the process. And so I hope within the next couple of years, we get a plan that is a lot of community input and we break ground within the next few years.
Well, it'll be fun to be out there when you break ground. I really appreciate your time as always, Dr. ElNahal.
Thanks so much, Larry.
Dr. Sharif ElNahal, CEO and President of University Hospital in Newark. Coming up next on Jersey Matters.
According to the CDC, about 8% of Americans who received their first dose of either the Moderna or Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine haven't gone back for their second dose. More on that story next.
The mega vaccination site in Edison still seeing a steady flow of customers, people wanting to get their shots. A positive sign amid national reports that the vaccination rate is drastically slowing down. Welcome back to Jersey Matters. In a worrisome report, the CDC finds that more than 5 million Americans never showed up for the second dose of their COVID-19 vaccine. Jersey Matters' Jennifer Marin checks out the situation in New Jersey. Jennifer.
Larry, pharmacists say the statistic is alarming, and they say it's happening in part for fear of side effects after the second dose. But they say that the only way to move forward with this pandemic is for people to follow through with their appointments.
Have you ever received the dose of COVID-19 vaccine?
No, never.
Angelo Roncace has friends who experience side effects after receiving their COVID-19 vaccines. But that didn't stop him.
It's not enough a reason to don't get it.
He recently heard about the new CDC data that says 8% of Americans aren't returning for their second dose of the vaccine. And he can't understand why.
Because if you see now what is happening in India, where the people are literally dying on the streets, they don't have oxygen. So if you see that, I mean, we are lucky in this country that we can get a vaccine in this chair, they give me water.
Pharmacist Ahmad McBell has been inoculating people at multiple sites since January. He says the problem is real.
Most of the days that we have shots lined up, we have 150 scheduled. We usually find like 30 to 40 don't show up, don't come back for the second dose. So it's a little disheartening because we got to reach out to them. We got to try to convince them.
It is vital residents get both doses.
Earlier in the week, Commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Health, Judy Persicelli, gave some insight on why people are missing their second doses.
We're finding that some people are, out of the state. Some people have expired. Some people have been hospitalized. Just recently with a surgical event.
You might get like a little body ache.
Pharmacists say there's also a new fear of all of the vaccines following the recent issues with rare blood clots caused by the J&J vaccine.
People started to say, all right, maybe these are ones we can't trust, and then they're not telling us the whole story. So I think it's our job to kind of reaffirm everyone that not everything is what you hear on Facebook or Instagram.
Others think they have enough protection after one dose.
The data doesn't tell us yet how long that first shot's protection protects you because it was designed to be a 2-dose series.
State officials are also urging people to get their second dose where they got their first, because the CDC automatically sends a second dose to that specific site. If you missed your appointment, you can still reschedule up to 6 weeks from the time of your first dose. Now, over in neighboring Bergen County, they're also seeing a decrease in the demand for the COVID-19 vaccine, and officials there are having talks about potentially paying people to receive their COVID-19 vaccine. For now, reporting in West New York, for Jersey Matters, I'm Jennifer Marin.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next on Jersey Matters.
The number of new applicants for law enforcement officers is down, while the number of early retirees for law enforcement officers is up in neighboring New York and Pennsylvania. But what about here in the Garden State? I'm Phil Andrews, and coming up on Jersey Matters, we'll discuss this situation.
Welcome back to Jersey Matters. The image of police officers has taken a beating across the country because of the media focus on police shootings and the political focus on reforming, even defunding the police. Because of that, it's difficult to find people who want to be a police officer. Jersey Matters' Phil Andrews takes a look at the problem in New Jersey. Phil.
Yeah, Larry, this has become a real big problem across the country, and it comes at a time when law enforcement as a whole is under a great deal of scrutiny.
Let's face it, the defund the police movement, the abolish the police movement, the constant negative anti-police sentiment has contributed to a police shortage. Across the bridge in Philadelphia, their police department currently has 268 vacancies and is expecting even more shortages in the near future. Recently in the Big Apple, the cut in that department's budget forced Mayor de Blasio to cancel a class of 1,200 recruits. The result? The total number of uniformed NYPD officers fell to 34,184, down more than 2,700 from the previous year's count.
Now, while this current trend has not yet affected the Garden State the way it has elsewhere, the New Jersey Benevolent Police Association says it's just a matter of time
Not to mention the fact the state is not getting the same quality candidate for law enforcement academies.
That's the interesting thing. The argument is, well, you'll always have people want to take the test. Well, perhaps, but if it's a question of you used to have hundreds of people wanting to take the test, and of those hundreds of people, you had individuals who were coming at this either with a military background or they had advanced degrees, they had master's degrees, or they had studied, in medicine or law and decided that they wanted to change the direction of their lives. They wanted to do public service and wanted to become an officer. And I think our concern is, are we going to see that same quality coming forward in this environment over the next couple of years?
Acting Superintendent of New Jersey State Police, Colonel Patrick Callahan, recently closed the application process for new recruits. That process yielded about 3,200 qualified applicants, a lower number than usual.
When I applied, Phil, I think it was 15,000 people applied in that initial process. So I think our last one, two plus years ago, had over 5,000. So I think I would be accurate in saying this is a historically low number with regards to candidates that have gone online and applied. But if we get, and again, with 3,200, if we get 2 state police classes out of this starting next January, we have a class going in August and that pool's already set. But hopefully this pool of candidates, and to your point, it whittles down pretty quickly. The PT test, the written test, the background, the psychological, the medical. At each phase, we start to see that dwindling and that attrition already happen before they're in the academy. And that's why it was important that I thought across the board that I thought our demographics were good with the 3,200 that we have in the pool.
And yes, all agreed the dwindling recruitment numbers and early retirements have everything to do with the current sentiment toward law enforcement as a whole.
The pendulum now has swung fairly significantly against police officers. Right. I think they're worried about what a jury would do. They're worried what the public would do. I think the stress has gotten to the point that they're scared to be police officers. We have to really look at that and determine how we fix that.
When they read about their profession being told that they're brutal, that they're violent, that they're racist, that they can't be trusted to follow their training, it impacts them. I mean, imagine you're getting up every day, putting on a uniform, putting yourself at risk to protect the public, and being told, well, we can't really trust you.
And trust is a must. Next week, I'll bring you part 2 of this story and the real numbers behind police-involved shootings. In Trenton, for Jersey Matters, I'm Phil Andrews.
All right, thank you very much, Phil. When we come right back, we have a new feature on Jersey Matters with suggestions for some post-pandemic day trips right here in New Jersey. Our first Jersey Jaunt is next.
I'm 100% positive that a lot of you are dealing with the same issues that I am with the sniffling and the sneezing and just the overall big league reaction to the insane amount of pollen in the air, feeling it from the trees and the mold especially. But get this, as our temperatures come up overnight, especially into the 50s, you're really going to start to see all these other numbers come through the roof. There's just no way out of it. It happens every single year, particularly bad this year because of how wet the spring has been. Our 6 to 10 day temperature outlook puts the mid-Atlantic states pretty much at or slightly above average, but I'm not 100% convinced yet that the warm weather is here to stay, as a couple more cooler days are in the cards. Over the next 10 days, just a few scattered showers, nothing too terribly organized, so that should get you pumped up and in a good mood. Your 7-day forecast, look at this, hovering around 60, so that's substantially cooler than where we've been. For Jersey Matters, I'm meteorologist Nor'easter Nick.
Welcome back to Jersey Matters. As I just mentioned, we're starting a new feature called Jersey Jaunt, where we take you to interesting places in New Jersey, towns, parks, businesses, museums, places that are worth a visit, worth a day trip now that we're allowed to get outside again. And we begin in beautiful Frenchtown, Hudson County.
Well, everybody wants to know why Frenchtown's called Frenchtown. Our founder was a guy named Paul-Henri Mallet-Prévost. He was Swiss-born, but he spoke French. He got word that he was on the list for the guillotine, and he jumped on his horse with his wingman, Nick Defroin, and they fled. 1794, Paul-Henri Mallet-Prévost arrived here, and he bought 968 acres of what is now Frenchtown. Suddenly everyone in this little burg, which was called Alexandria, is speaking French, so people started to call it Frenchtown.
But the cool thing about Frenchtown is the people who live here use everything in town too. You know, it's not just a tourist stop. So when you stop at one of the cafes or one of the great coffee shops or the gift shops or whatever, the locals are in there. We buy our birthday presents for each other from each other, and we all know each other and we all support each other. So it's this, it's kind of magic.
It's like a little utopia. Like when people think of New Jersey, they don't think of Frenchtown, but it just goes to show you that New Jersey has so much more to offer than the Real Housewives in the Jersey Shore.
There's a lot of musicians, photographers, creators, entrepreneurs, young people, old people, everybody potlucks together.
It's a nice place to walk around. There's shops, there's nice restaurants, there's coffee shops.
And the other thing that's really great is it's all within walkability. So there's fantastic, art galleries and bookshop, and we've got all of this great stuff, but you don't have to walk 6 miles to get a sense of all of it.
My business partner and I have always loved it here, the charm and being close to the river.
It's a nice place to be. I came here in 1977 and never wanted to leave, and haven't yet.
We're lucky. We got to remember, don't take it for granted. Like, this is a special place.
Just beautiful, isn't it? By the way, Frenchtown, New Jersey is included on just about every list of the most beautiful small towns in America. You can go online and see. And while you're at it, go to jerseymatters.com and make a suggestion for our next Jersey jaunt. Still to come on Jersey Matters, ticks at the beach. We'll break down the latest report from the CDC with their leading expert on ticks and Lyme disease next. Welcome back to Jersey Matters. I'm Larry Menti. It is officially tick season. And now, according to a new CDC report, we have to worry about ticks at the beach, at least close to the beach. We asked Dr. Ben Beard, the CDC expert on ticks and Lyme disease, about the report. Doctor, thank you so much for your time today. We spoke a couple of years ago when you came to New Jersey for a symposium on Lyme. Things have changed since then. I saw an article that was out that was based on a CDC finding that ticks have now found their way at least near beaches, if not on beaches, because vegetation has come back around beaches on protected areas. That's New Jersey, where wildlife has come back. If wildlife is in these protected dunes and the vegetation around those dunes, does that mean that we also have ticks in those dunes?
Basically, anywhere you have wildlife, you're going to have ticks. And the ticks, these animals are the key hosts where the immature stages of these ticks are developing. So the larval and nymphal stage ticks are developing on these small rodents and then larger mammals and things like that. And then they might feed on a small mammal, and that's where they erode, where they get infected with the Lyme disease Borrelia. And then they drop off, they molt, and then they crawl up on vegetation to look for the next host that walks by. And they do this behavior we call questing. They actually crawl up on the end of the grass and they stick their hands out with their claws and they just wait for something, with the first thing that's warm and breathing carbon dioxide out, exhaling it, to walk by, and they jump on it because they know that's their meal ticket.
I just talked to someone who said they were going to get their property treated for Lyme disease. Does that work?
Yes, I think that the important thing is to treat the areas where deer are likely to be moving and small animals, and where people are most likely to be exposed to the bites of these infected ticks. And you might have to treat more than one time to get effective treatment. I've talked to people in New Jersey, especially, who found that just one-time treatment per year, it knocks the ticks down, but they come back later in the season. But if they spray maybe twice a year, once at the beginning of the summer and once again kind of mid to late summer, maybe 6 weeks or 2 months later, they get good control of ticks. And so, and I want to emphasize that there are a number of different tools that we can use for preventing ticks and exposure to ticks in your backyard. There are a number of insecticides to use, and as long as you use these the way they are labeled by EPA, you can count on them being safe and effective. And but there are a number of non-pesticide methods you can use by putting up fencing around your yard that could keep the deer out, by using vegetation that the deer are not attracted to, and there's some certain shrubs and things like that that are not good deer food, and so you're not going to be attracting the deer into your yard. There are actually little boxes that you can use that have bait in them, and when the mice come in to eat this bait, they crawl under a little wick that actually has pesticide on it and kills the ticks that are just on that one mouse. And so those are all available for use in something we call integrated pest control, integrated pest management. And we have links to that at our website on how to protect yourself from the exposure of ticks. We call it on people, pets, and property. So you can look at all of those things at our website to see what tools are available for a consumer to protect themselves from the possible bites of infected ticks. And this is in addition to using the things we always say, like wear repellents, do tick checks, shower after you've been out in these areas where ticks are found, and throw your clothes in the dryer on high heat for 10 minutes to kill any ticks that are on your clothes. And then, of course, be vigilant. And if you get some sort of fever or rash after being out in those areas, see your healthcare provider. Don't wait.
Right, because Lyme disease is treatable, especially if you catch it early. Is that right?
Exactly. It's one of those diseases that if you catch it early, it typically is easy to treat. But if you miss it, either don't diagnose it or you don't get some of these telltale signs that we always tell people to look for, or you don't recognize those, and the disease gets established and it disseminates in your body into multiple organs, it can be very difficult to treat.
When you were here a year ago, or a couple of years ago, for Chris Smith's symposium in Wall Township, he was looking for more funding to fight Lyme disease. Because it is such a problem in New Jersey. Are we continuing to make advances? Because I know some people are chronically suffer from Lyme disease.
Yeah, that's a great question. And since we last talked, I was actually thinking back of some of the things that we've been able to do since then. And actually, it's been pretty significant. I mean, for one thing, we got a brand new pesticide, a natural product insecticide called Nucatone. We worked with our sister agency, BARDA, and with the Environmental Protection Agency to get this product registered. And so it's a brand new active ingredient. And it's a natural product. It's actually originally isolated from the peel from citrus peel, from grapefruit, and it's also found in Alaskan yellow cedar bark. And so, this compound, it has really good activity against ticks and mosquitoes.
Is there a Lyme disease vaccine?
There is a Lyme disease vaccine right now that is going through phase 2 clinical trials with FDA. And, it will probably be a few more years before it would be available on the market, but it is right now going through clinical trials, and there are plans for phase 3 clinical trials, which would be the next stage in this. And, it's hard for me to say when a vaccine might be available, but it could be as early as 2024.
Well, that's wonderful. We're in tick season right now, right? Spring.
We are definitely coming into it. And as you probably know, May is Lyme Disease Awareness Month.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Doctor. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time and I appreciate your expertise and thanks for sharing it with us. Dr. Ben Beard from the CDC. Coming up on Jersey Matters, it's that time of year again. Time for the New Jersey Festival of Ballooning. It's back. We'll talk to the man in charge next. Welcome back to Jersey Matters. I'm Larry Menti. It is one of the great and most spectacular New Jersey events, the New Jersey Lottery Festival of Ballooning. And after having to take off a year because of the pandemic, the New Jersey Festival is back. As we do every year, I spoke with Executive Director Howard Freeman about what we can expect this year. Well, it's that time of year again. It's good to see you again. I always enjoy talking to you about the Balloon Festival. I understand, which I don't think we ever got from past interviews. Someone wrote that this is the largest balloon festival or festival of ballooning, as you like to say, on the continent. Is that right?
It's the largest summertime balloon and music festival in North America.
Wow.
At the end of July here in New Jersey.
Yeah, no, and I've been to it and it is wonderful. Tell us about this year.
This year is going to be interesting. You know, I think like myself, a lot of people have cabin fever. You know, in 1918, the last time there was a pandemic, right after that, you had the roaring 20s. And that's not what I think we're seeing now. So come July 23rd to 25th, people are going to want to get outdoors safely with their family. We have 744 acres at Solberg Airport where the festival takes place. And we're looking forward to having our usual 100 balloons. We have Bare Naked Ladies on Saturday night. We have Styx on Sunday. We have Lori Berkner, the Adele, the preschool set on Friday. And we're adding things every day.
Yeah, you had to cancel last year, right?
Unfortunately, first we rescheduled to October, and then given the COVID protocols and everything, we had to cancel. So this will be the first one in 2 years, and everybody's excited to get out there. A number of people let their tickets ride and wanted to keep them, didn't want to lose the VIP treatment they were getting. So yes, this will be the first one, but it'll be the 38th annual Balloon Festival. It's the New Jersey Lottery Festival of Ballooning.
I'll tell you what, you talked about Bare Naked Ladies, you talked about Styx. I know that there's lots of games and activities for family there while you're there. There's lots of food there. It is an all-day, a several-day event. But the star of the show, and this is what I was blown away by when I went, was all of the balloons going up at sunset. There's really nothing like that I've seen before. It is a beautiful sight. How many balloons this year? And talk about some of the stars of the show.
You know, our slogan this year, things are looking up, and that's in terms of the pandemic being over and in terms of the balloons, certainly. Our signature balloon this year will be one we call the New Jersey Lottery Sunny Boy, which is a bright sun. It commemorates their 101 days of summer, so that should be pretty cool. You know, we also have a unicorn, which Allie the unicorn, and every kid, every adult, everybody loves a unicorn. We have a sloth, and we have all kinds of other special shapes that we're adding every day, to be honest. You know, it's a couple hundred ascensions I've seen here and around the world, and the hair on my arm still sticks up as soon as the fans get out, start blowing air into the fabric. And then as soon as the burners fire it up and hot air rises. So when those balloons start going up, it brings out the little kid in everyone. And the morning ascension, Saturday and Sunday morning at 6:30, which is an hour after sunrise, the sun is just coming over the Cushatunk Mountains. It's still quiet. It's not that hot out yet. It's not as crowded. So for people who still want to avoid crowds, those Saturday and Sunday morning ascensions are the perfect time. And it's really a spiritual experience being out there. And that's my favorite time.
No, I'm going to try to make that this year. The morning one sounds wonderful. It's just that we're not morning people. But that New Jersey Lottery sun going up and rising is a tremendous metaphor for this year in the summer.
You know, I hadn't even thought about that, but as I said, the things are looking up. That'll be very cool. We'll play Here Comes the Sun or some similar thing after we play Up and Away, which we always do. But, you know, the lottery is adding a lot of new things. What, you know, the being challenged to have a new title sponsor, and we really appreciate it. They came on last year. So we have a lot of interesting new things that we're developing by the day, utilizing the CSP, the COVID safety protocols that a local healthcare company is providing to us. So, with extra sanitizing stations and all those sort of things. So
how much does this mean for New Jersey? How much in the terms of money and cash and taxes does it mean for the state?
Years ago, we did an economic impact study. Montclair Business, the business department at Montclair University did a economic impact study and found out it was over 53.4 million. And that was years ago. So I'm sure it's a lot more now. We hire probably 2,500 people, whether it's ticket takers or vendors or all the different people involved for trash cleanup and that sort of thing. So those people come, and stay for how many days they're here. We start building the festival 5 days in advance. So, all those people are eating, they're drinking, they're getting gas, they're staying in hotels. We've raised over $3 million for nonprofits throughout the last 27 years. So we're pretty happy about what it does. And last year, 2019, I keep saying last year, but 2019 was the last year we had the festival. There were over 950 million media impressions, to say nothing of online and social and digital, with positive content coming out of the state. So forget any negatives that you've heard about here or anywhere else. Just seeing positive spin on the state with people reporting from all around the world and seeing it all around the world is something we're pretty proud of, to be able to put the spotlight in a positive light on New Jersey. And that's why our New Jersey Tourism is a backer of ours as well. And we're proud of that partnership as well.
I always appreciate your time, and you are a great ambassador for New Jersey and for the Festival of Ballooning.
Larry, thank you. And as I said, things are looking up. Come on out and experience more than just hot air.
Howard Freeman, Executive Director of the New Jersey Lottery Festival of Ballooning. Still to come on Jersey Matters.
Take a ride in the Covee Car, a way for you to get to and from your COVID-19 vaccination appointment. Learn how next on Jersey Matters.
Welcome back to Jersey Matters. Have you seen this car? Maybe you've seen it on the road with the giant spikes coming out of the top and a giant mask on the front. It is a funny looking car, but it has a serious purpose. It can be a lifesaver. Jersey Matters' Kimberly Kravitz explains. Kimberly.
Well, we know it can be challenging finding an appointment for the COVID-19 vaccine. And then for some people, once you lock in an appointment, they wonder, how are they going to get to and from that appointment? Well, we may have the answer for you right here in New Jersey.
I just picked up 3 rides just this morning that we're going to be doing, so we've only been doing it 3 weeks.
Meet Joe and Shirley, founders of the Covee Car, offering free rides to anyone that needs help getting to and from their COVID vaccine appointment.
Could you imagine how many people just need to get to an appointment and can't get there, don't have a car, don't have a ride, or don't have family to take them? So Joe would pick you up, take you to your vaccine appointment, bring you home, and I think that's awesome.
And the car? Believe me, you can't miss it.
So the red spikes are to represent the spike proteins that are on the surface of the coronavirus, and the little orange dots that are there are to represent the surface proteins of the virus. We wanted to make the car very memorable.
It all started as a passion project.
I've restored probably easy 20 to 30 vintage cars in my life, and this car here was just something that we bought initially since there was going to be a pandemic, and I was going to do something interesting with it.
We spoke with a woman in town who used Joe and Shirley for a ride to her first vaccine. She is disabled and is unable to drive, and tells me that Joe was a real lifesaver.
I have arthritis in both knees, so he was able to help me, get out. He was, I'm going to say like a friend already, and I don't even know Joe and Shirley.
And when it dawned on Cindy that she would need another ride for her second shot,
I had thought, I would have to ask him again, but when I said to him, he said, no, he says, I will bring you. Just let me know.
Of course. I absolutely would. Absolutely would. She asked me at the end of the ride if I would do the second one. I said, of course I'll do the second one for you.
Above all, it's safety first.
The interior of the car is sanitized before anyone gets in the car. So we wipe down the whole interior with alcohol pads, and they're required to wear a mask when they get into the car. We take their temperature once they get into the car also.
Although the pair are retired, the Covee Car certainly takes up a ton of their time and money too.
This one was a short one. It was only 2 hours, but normally it's between 2 and 3 hours for an appointment, plus our time in answering emails and monitoring the social media.
Provident Bank was nice enough to donate 100 hand sanitizers. We have a donation site on Facebook to get donations. Each ride is about 2.5 hours, and it usually runs about 100 to 125 miles. So with gas being what it is, it comes out of my pocket. But luckily we have a good investor. It's called Visa, my Visa card.
We are more likely to be charitable of our time because it's one of the most important things, and we kind of like to be more personal about our giving. I guess we're selfish.
And it's the one thing you can't get any more of is time.
So for Hunterdon and Warren County residents, you can book your appointment by sending an email at joescoveecar@gmail.com, or you can reach them directly by phone at 908-328-6730. Reporting from Hunterdon County for Jersey Matters, I'm Kimberly Kravitz.
Thank you, Kimberly. My commentary on an American miracle is next. When you diffuse America's much maligned vaccine rollout from politics, it's an unprecedented success, an American miracle. But alas, partisan gamesmanship has prevented the accolades that everyone involved deserves. Democrats will tell you that President Biden basically had to start from scratch because Trump didn't have a coherent plan for the vaccines.
We learned this morning that the Trump administration had no real plan for the production and distribution of the vaccine.
And Republicans accuse Biden of deceitfully taking credit for the entire vaccination plan that Trump had already started.
Just as President Biden has desperately tried to take credit for the incredible, truly historic work President Trump did to ensure that we have vaccines going into the arms to save lives.
We are so divided in this country, so deep in the dogma of our political tribes, that we can't see the obvious. That both men deserve credit for helping to facilitate a modern-day medical miracle. The American government deserves credit for its tenacious cohesiveness in competently dealing with an historic health disaster despite an ugly presidential campaign and an even uglier and bitter transition of power. As of April 28th, the United States has administered 235 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine, and almost 100 million Americans have been fully vaccinated. That leads the world. We are distributing the vaccine 3 times faster than Europe and 5 times faster than Canada. If President Biden's aggressive plan to vaccinate every willing America by July comes to fruition, we will cross the finish line far ahead of the rest of the world. And there's no reason to believe that that won't happen because he has been ahead of schedule so far.
After I promised we'd get 100 million COVID-19 vaccine shots into people's arms in 100 days, we will have provided over 220 million COVID shots in those 100 days.
That's wonderful. And the Biden administration does deserve a lot of credit, but he would not have reached those goals without the Trump administration, and it deserves credit too. America's vaccination plan started on May 15th, 2020 with the advent of Operation Warp Speed. That happened almost 9 months before Joe Biden was sworn into office as president. With Operation Warp Speed, the Trump administration secured 1 billion doses of the COVID-19 vaccines from 6 different companies because they weren't certain which vaccine would be ready first. It was Pfizer that finished first. And because of some bureaucratic walls that the Trump administration knocked down, it got emergency use authorization from the FDA in mid-December. The Trump administration then purchased another 100 million doses from Pfizer and started vaccinations immediately. When Joe Biden was sworn into office, 900,000 Americans a day were already being vaccinated. Now, the Biden administration did accelerate the program, and at one point in early April, they were vaccinating 3.4 million Americans a day. But the vast majority of those vaccinations were purchased by the Trump administration. Again, a truly miraculous American achievement that the transfer of power not only did not disrupt, but accelerated the inoculation of the country. So why can't both men share the credit? It gets to be embarrassing. Biden went as far as to tell Anderson Cooper at a CNN town hall that when he took over, there were no vaccines.
When you and I talked last, we talked about it's one thing to have the vaccine, which we didn't have when we came into office, but a vaccinator.
It was such a strange thing to claim, especially since President-elect Joe Biden received his first vaccination on December 21st in Wilmington, Delaware, when Donald Trump was still president. And back then, he even gave the Trump administration credit.
The administration deserves some credit getting this off the ground with Operation Warp Speed.
It's important to point out that he said that after the presidential campaign was over and before he was sworn into office, when political rivalry didn't infect his choice of words. Biden hasn't said anything similar since getting the vaccination on that day. In fact, he's criticized Donald Trump, and I don't think Donald Trump has ever said a kind word about Joe Biden. And it's a shame, isn't it? Because they could do so much good together. For the first time since the vaccinations have been made available, there has been a sharp drop in the vaccination rate from 3.4 million vaccinations a day to 2.7 million vaccinations a day. And only 30% of the American adult population has been fully vaccinated. It would be a perfect time for Trump and Biden to appear together and encourage people to get vaccinated. That would put an exclamation point on what so far has been a reluctantly bipartisan American miracle. I'm Larry Menti. We'll talk again soon.